2010 Ford F-150 with the 5.4. Customer complaint on this one is it would randomly not crank. A no crank, no start, which it's doing right now. So if I put the key in here and crank it, nothing. So rewind a little bit. Yesterday I came out probably like 35-40 degrees and it started up. I drove it over to this bay, it ran, I shut it off and it wouldn't crank. Same thing this morning as well. So nothing there. So it's not a security thing. When you first start it, your security light will go solid and then it'll go away. And I'm cranking in here, nothing. If it was a security thing, the light would come on. So first thing I did is I'm using the factory Ford scan tool, IDS here in the VCM2. Let me hook that up and show you a full system scan and go from there. All right, so I was in here before. It's a 10 5.4. Again, this is Ford IDS. And what we're going to do here, there's the VIN. We're going to do a full system scan. All continuous memory codes, or all continuous memory DTCs for all modules. We'll let that scan and then I'll come back. All right, should be done reading here shortly. There's going to be some old codes in here that were cleared from when I had the PCM unplugged, troubleshooting before I started filming it. And we're eventually going to do some testing on this connector here. So here's the engine control module. That's what is bad, and I'll show you here why I took this back shell off here. We're going to test there in a minute. Once this thing is done scanning. All right, so here's all the modules. There's the gem module is remote keyless entry. That has nothing to do with the security stuff. That's a different function. That's for your unlock and lock. And then the tire pressure circuit issue, and then your classic P1000 means the codes were cleared. So anyways, let me exit out of this. And then what I did next is I could use IDS or I could use an Autel. I'm just going to use an Autel because it's easier on the eyes to read the live data. I'm going to show you some other parameters here. What we got going on. But before I do that, I was like, okay, it ain't starting, so let me look at the starting circuit here. So if I go to my schematics for this vehicle here, the glare's not so bad. There's our starter motor. There's our starter motor, and there's our battery junction box, which is this guy right here. This is our starter relay. I took the back shell off for now, and I'm going to show you here a test. So what happens is this relay energizes. So you got your voltage coming in from your ignition switch, going down through your starter relay. We have 12 volts there. The computer grounds it through the starter motor control, SMC. It sucks this latch over, energizes it, and starts it. So I'll show you what I did next to prove that this circuit is good, and how I proved the wiring over here is good, but the PCM is bad. All right, so now I got my AES wave kit hooked up. I took that relay out, just a 4-prong relay. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got all 4 terminals broken out to this. And if I latch this 87 here, it'll crank over. And it started right up. So let me turn it back off. Pull that key out. So that tells me the load side of this circuit is good. Now the control side. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my meter, or you can use this little light on here, and it should light up. And it lights up very dimly because it's not going all the way to ground. Let me get that set up next. All right, I know I said I was going to do the scan tool function, but let's do this part since I got it set up. So we should always have voltage on pin 3 here. It's hot at all times, which is going to be pin 30 on here, which we have battery voltage. Okay, the other side you're going to have voltage on 85 or 86, which is going to be 1 on here. On this one's going to be 85, which is 1 on here because that comes from the ignition switch. Go ahead and crank. So right there, there's a little bit of a voltage drop there going through the resistor. They're going through all this, I guess. So we got voltage coming in there. We know this circuit's good. We know the power is good here. But the control side, this yellow wire, which goes from the bottom of this relay to this pin here, is not grounding it. So let me get that part set up next. All right, so what I got now is I got this yellow wire probed there at connector 175 Bravo. 175 Bravo, if it focuses. Pin 7, yellow wire. Go ahead and crank. So turn it off. There's 12 volts there. There's always voltage up to the point of ground. The PCM should be in fact grounding that circuit, and it's not. And it's not starting. I got the relay back in. I can also check that circuit right here. Oh, my focus camera. Right there. Crank. Let go. So there's your resistor inside there. I'm on that pin right there, going towards me, the bottom of the camera, which is pin 2. Same thing, but I know I have voltage up there. But it's not grounded in the PCM. Now, if I take this, keys off, Kenny. Everything's back to factory. Relay's back in. We got our ground. If I ground this, crank it, and it runs. Turn it off. Crank it. Nothing. Okay, leave the key off. So the PCM is not controlling the ground. Now you can leave the key off. Now the only question is, two things left is inputs into the PCM, like park neutral and the path security. That would eliminate that transistor or FET or field effect transistor from grounding it. We're going to validate that, and we're going to look at power and grounds on that PCM. So let's hook up the scan tool next. Alright, now we're going to show you the PCM inputs. I'm just going to use the Autel, one of the Autels. It's just a little easier to, for me anyways, to read live data than the Ford IDS one, because you can scroll through it easier. Just easier on the eyes. I just like the tablet. So we'll get this downloaded here, and then I'll show you those inputs next. Alright, so we're going to go in the live data here. We're under the ECM, the module that's bad. I'll show you some data here. Once it pulls up. Alright, so the two PIDs in here, key position for start indicated and starter motor relay enable. That's the relay we're talking. So I'm going to hit, I'm stuck cranking it there and letting go. All I'm doing is cranking it here. I'm cranking it right now, and it goes from on to enabled, or off to on and disabled to enabled. So key position for start indicated says off. I crank it, it says on. Starter motor relay enable, it says disabled. Then it says it enabled. The software's trying to do it, but the hardware in there, that field effect transistor, is not doing it. That is in the PCM. Now let's go to the we'll look at the instrument cluster and the gem module. See if what security is in there. Pulling up the instrument cluster. So I pulled up some PIDs. Ignition start run position, yes. We are in the run position. Passive anti-theft service module status. It says yeah, sir. Start position says no until I turn it. We don't care about this last one. I just pulled up some PIDs. So start position, it says no. This is an instrument cluster. I crank it, it says yes. Turn it off, no. Crank it, it says yes. Now let's see if there's any in the gem module, because I believe that's part of the circuit as well. Right, go right there. The two codes we had in there again are for the tire pressure monitor and the remote keyless entry, not actual security. Let's pull this up now. Download its data. Now we're in the gem module. ECU derived ignition state start. No. If I crank it, it says yes. So this module is getting the signal, the gem module. ECU derived ignition state start. Come on, focus, camera. So it says no, then I crank it, it says yes. Now let's look at one other thing, the park neutral switch. And then all of our inputs will be good. So while that's pulling up, obviously it's got to be in park or neutral for it to start. I want to make sure our indication is correct. All right, so it's in park. If I move this to I'm in the transmission module, reverse, neutral, crank it in neutral, still nothing. Put it back in park. Focus, camera. Sorry about the glare. So yeah, still in park. So our inputs to this are good to go. Park neutral status and the security. So the only other thing I checked, which I'm not going to show it on video, because it's going to be hard to film, is I used an incandescent test light. It's like 2.5 amps. I checked my power and grounds. I loaded, oh, this glare is so bad. Here's your ECM, your powers, keep alive power, your hot and run start power, and hot and start and run power, and then your grounds. I load checked them all with that incandescent test light. This guy right here. I checked them all up here and they were all good. And if they weren't, power and ground's good, I think I would have another issue, but I wanted to validate that the test light lit up. So that's why we need to get a PCM for it. It's not controlling the ground inside of the PCM. We'll get one in, we'll program the VIN to it, do parameter reset, make sure it's got the new calibration and all that stuff, and that'll be good to go. That's it for this 2010 Ford F-150, a random no crank, no start.